Da, wyjście po te tereny? Da. No înseamnă că s-a fixat pe acolo.
Millions of people from Florida to Pennsylvania are under the threat of severe storms today as a powerful weather system pushes east after having already left a path of destruction in some parts of the country. Nearly 200,000 customers lost power across 5 states. At least 34 people have been killed amid this stretch of dangerous and deadly weather. ABC's Ika Jachi has the details.
A powerful weather system is wreaking havoc across parts of the central and southern U.S. More than 60 reported tornadoes since Friday, from Missouri to Alabama. The National Weather Service confirms an EF3 tornado hit Bakersfield, Missouri, damaging numerous homes and businesses in the area.
My family was wanting to stay home, and I told them, no, this is going to be bad. We got to go.
In Rolla, this car destroyed by a fallen tree. Multiple power lines down, homes and businesses destroyed.
Oh, man.
In Mississippi, this twister captured on video in Tylertown. ABC's chief meteorologist Ginger Z is there.
It's kind of amazing to think here at the Paradise Ranch RV Resort that no one was hurt. Many of the cabins were not occupied at the time. They are just a mangled mess in between what looks like a clear cutting of these pines by that tornado.
Another tornado spinning in Taylorsville, debris being tossed around. Widespread damage across Alabama as well. 52 of the state's 67 counties affected. The roof torn off Winterboro High School in Talladega County. This school bus tossed like a toy car. The National Weather Service says an EF2 tornado went through there with winds up to 120 miles per hour. In Arkansas, an EF3 tornado wrecking parts of Cave City with winds up to 165 miles per hour.
Okay, everything's okay.
In Elliott, Mississippi, people trapped under the debris.
Can you stand? You want to go back down?
First responders pulling survivors out of the rubble. In Paulding County, Georgia, roads littered with falling trees and power lines.
My mind, when I see this, is just in complete shock.
The dangerous weather system not done yet. It's forecast to move up the I-95 corridor into the northeast.
So last night we went to pick my grandpa's woman up. She lives up top of Happy Holler. On the way back down CC, our truck got hit. It got covered up by a bunch of pine trees. After everything blew over, we come down here. This is my Uncle Mike's and my Aunt Stacy's house. My Uncle Mike passed away a few years back. She was trapped in that bedroom, only room standing left of this house. She was trapped in it. We got her out the window, got her up to the Earth home that's up the road. Then we were helping other people. We found a few bodies that was out in the field, a few deceased people. There was a guy that was probably about a quarter mile back behind us through all these trees and debris. We ended up going through and cutting a bunch of trees out of the road to get EMS and fire department down here. It was a very rough deal last night. It's really disturbing for what happened to the people, the casualties last night, and I feel bad for their family and my dearest condolences to them, but it could have been a lot worse than what it was.
The severe weather has moved out, but the cleanup and recovery efforts are just beginning in Mississippi. We now know the powerful storms have claimed the lives of at least 6 people in the state. The governor has issued a state of emergency. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jessica Gertler in for Shea Arthur tonight. WREG's Raven Copeland joins us now with the latest. Raven, emergency officials say several tornadoes hit Mississippi, and now they're saying that number could grow.
Good evening, Jessica. That's right. The National Weather Service is reporting 12 tornadoes in the state from Friday to Saturday night. But as you mentioned, that total is expected to increase. Now, this is what we know so far from emergency officials. They say that more than 200 people are displaced at this time, and at least 27 storm-related injuries have been reported across the state. The severe weather left behind devastating and destructive damage in several Mississippi counties, including Grenada and Marshall. Now, we brought you Team 3 coverage from both of those areas on Saturday. 2 Grenada County homeowners told WREG about the damage they're currently dealing with.
Ceilings are coming in, there's insulation, there's debris, you can't get into this back bathroom back here. Both of my son's rooms are gone.
Now ahead at 10, I'll tell you about the new risk that several Mississippi counties could face in the coming days. Reporting from
NASA says global sea levels rose by more than expected last year. The agency blamed an unusual amount of ocean warming combined with water from melting glaciers. 2024 was the hottest year on record. Hannah Hundal is a delegate to the UN climate change conferences, and she spoke to me earlier telling me the significance of the rising levels.
The global sea level rise is higher than expected. It clocked in around 0.59 centimeters per year. It was expected to be around 0.43 centimeters per year. Why does this matter? Well, two reasons. Number one, it's not just that the sea levels are rising. We know that. It's actually that rate of change. The rate of that rise is picking up. And number two, about 2/3 of this rise was deemed to be due to thermal expansion, which is the warming of the ocean water. So as we have a greater concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, that's trapping heat. And our oceans are actually absorbing around 90% of that heat. And of course, that's not without consequences. And I think that's the issue we're dealing with right now.
So when we say we've got the ocean levels are rising, is this a uniform process?
Well, the issue right now is that because around 2/3 of that rise was due to thermal expansion, the ocean actually trapping that excess heat. I mean, we're seeing the effects of this excess heat throughout the world. 2024 was the hottest year on record. It featured the hottest summer on record, which included the hottest day on record. So when we really take a step back and look at the lay of the land here, it's not a pretty picture. And unfortunately, now is the time to be really honing in on policies that help us facilitate that critical energy transition toward the clean energy economy of the future, away from these greenhouse gas emissions that are underlying a lot of these processes.
Where are we with nations agreeing that something has to be done? Because every time we have the climate change COP that is held, people lose more and more hope. I mean, we can't help those glaciers recover, can we? So what can be done?
It's very important to think about, 2/3 of that global sea level rise was due to thermal expansion, 1/3, though, due to the melting of glaciers and ice sheets. So we have so much to think about in terms of how do we actually get a handle on this situation. And you're absolutely right. We need multinational collaboration on this issue. And unfortunately, at this very moment here in the United States, we had President Trump take the U.S. out of the Paris Agreement, just like he did during his first term in office. The U.S. missed the recent meeting of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the global authority on climate change and whose reports really underpin all global climate policy. And, now the head of the Environmental Protection Agency here just announced that it would be the most consequential day of deregulation in U.S. history, meaning that he's looking to target those key climate regulations that President Biden had put forth. Hannah, so unfortunately, very precarious.
Hannah, very quickly, I think many people are familiar with President Trump's approach to climate change. Who is doing it right?
I think, interestingly, actually, China is sort of stepping up in terms of clean energy. They're really leading the charge there, which is a very fascinating development to see. So I'm very hopeful that we'll see some continued progress there, and maybe they will step into the fold. I mean, a lot remains to be determined. We know that in 2021, at the UN Climate Change Conference that occurred in Scotland, China and India sort of teamed up together to try to suppress a movement to transition away from coal. So, there's so many pieces here that are in flux, but I'm hopeful that, with some of that leadership in Asia around clean energy, maybe more countries will step up from the fray.
Welcome back. It was a big day on Capitol Hill. A federal judge in D.C. blocked the Trump administration from using a wartime law from the 1700s. It's aimed at deporting Venezuelan migrants accused of having ties to a criminal gang. As CBS's Christian Benavides reports, this comes as the Trump administration is doubling down on pursuing the deportation of a protest organizer at Columbia University.
The government of El Salvador released images Sunday showing what they say are 261 gang members deported from the U.S., mainly from Venezuela, that will be held in detention by that country. The announcement comes after a federal judge blocked the Trump administration from invoking a 1798 law called the Alien Enemies Act. The law would allow the arrest and deportation without typical due process of Venezuelan migrants who are accused of being members of the South American gang, Tren de Aragua. The judge in Washington blocked deportations with a 14-day restraining order. He said planes already in the air carrying deportees should turn around. It's unclear if the Trump administration violated that order.
We want to get rid of Tren de Aragua gang members. They're terrorists too. The president designated them, asked me to designate, and I did, as a terrorist organization. We want to get rid of them as well. We don't want terrorists in America. I don't know how hard that is to understand.
On Face the Nation, Secretary of State Marco Rubio also defended the administration's move to begin deportation proceedings against Mahmoud Khalil, a U.S. permanent resident who organized pro-Palestinian protests at Columbia University.
If he had told us, I'm going over there and I'm going over there to become the spokesperson and one of the leaders of a movement that's going to turn one of your allegedly elite colleges upside down, people can't even go to school, library buildings being vandalized, we never would have let him in.
Meantime, concerns over tariffs still hang heavy for investors. The U.S. stock market will seek to recover Monday after a bruising week, which saw the worst losses in 2 years.
Now, in addition to alleged members of the Venezuelan gang, the president of El Salvador says members of a gang in their country were also deported.
About 1,300 journalists and other employees here at Voice of America were placed on leave indefinitely, a situation that has become all too familiar for federal employees in the last 2 months.
We are concerned anytime there's sort of a wholesale shutdown of a newsroom.
Tonight, the U.S. Agency for Global Media, the latest federal entity to face cuts under President Donald Trump. That includes Voice of America, which was created during World War II in order to combat Nazi propaganda. This latest dismantling prompting concern, according to William McCarran, who is the director of the Press Freedom Center at the National Press Club.
It appears to be on the border of being dangerous.
In a statement, Mike Balsamo, who is the president of the National Press Club, said the cuts, quote, undermine America's longstanding commitment to a free and independent press.
It is something that's designed to help countries who don't really have a robust journalism of their own be able to understand what's going on in the world and with a factual basis. It's something they can rely on.
Also part of the cuts, Radio Free Europe and Radio Free Asia, organizations whose intention is to provide unbiased news to countries who otherwise might not have access to it. They broadcast to more than 40 countries, including Russia, Ukraine, and China.
So they'll have 60 days to get another job if they're completely cut loose. And so this is a problem. They could be in 60 days being deported, to China, where they will not be treated well.
McCarran says he's worried about what could happen to those journalists, especially the ones who work here on a visa.
We have to pay attention to, is it a step towards something more?
But when asked if the future of the First Amendment is in danger, he says we'll have to wait and see. Among the 6 other agencies that are also facing cuts in Friday's executive order, the Institute of Museum and Library Services and the Minority Business Development Agency. In Southwest
وجدنا داخل هذه البئر شخصيات مختلفة اللي هو إناث وذكور كبار وصغار.
شايفين هذه؟ احنا كانوا بيقتلوها جنبنا، خلوها يومين 3 هنا الدعم السريع، يومين 3 شفتوا؟ والبير ده شهدت ما شهدت، ونحن شفنا ما شفنا. والحمد لله والله العظيم استلبنا ودقونا وضربونا وتعذبنا، ونقول حسبي الله ونعم الوكيل على الدعم السريع.
A mass anti-government student protest took over the streets of Belgrade, Serbia this weekend. The ongoing protests started after the canopy of a railway station collapsed back in November, killing 15 people. The tragedy became a flashpoint for latent discontent that had been brewing over President Alexander Vucic's 12 years in power.
President Donald Trump ordered airstrikes in Yemen on Saturday. U.S. Senate Majority Leader John Thune responded to the airstrikes in a statement the same day, saying, quote, "Today's airstrikes in Yemen sent a clear and unambiguous message to our adversaries around the world. Attacking the United States and our allies will not be tolerated," end quote. You can read the rest of the statement in this story on KELLOLAND.com.
The first U.S. strikes against Yemen's Houthis under President Trump have killed 31 people in multiple cities in the country. The Iran-backed rebels say that women and children are among those dead. The strikes targeted multiple cities, including the Yemeni capital of Sana'a. Strikes were also reported in Geraf, that is home to Houthi-held military facilities and its political bureau. Also, southwestern Damar and the district of Abs.
The American aggression doesn't scare us, and we will not give up on Gaza, whatever the cost. The Yemeni people are different from other people. We will sacrifice everything we have for our brothers in Gaza to support Gaza.
Well, footage posted on social media by the U.S. Central Command showed what it says are fighter jets taking off after operations launched against Houthis in Yemen. In a post on social media, Trump warned the Houthis to stop attacking shipping or face overwhelming lethal force. He also sent a direct message to Iran to end support for the rebels immediately. The strike comes days after the Houthis said they will resume attacks on Israeli vessels in response to the blockade of aid into Gaza. It also comes at a time when the U.S. is trying to bring Iran to the negotiating table of its nuclear program. Shortly after Trump's announcement, Iran condemned the strikes, calling them a gross violation of international law. The Houthis have vowed retaliation, saying the attacks will not pass without response.
Iran will not wage war, but if anyone threatens, it will give appropriate, decisive and conclusive responses.
The U.S. called the strikes necessary to protect global shipping lanes. The Pentagon has reported over 300 attacks on U.S. and commercial ships since 2023. The Houthis have stepped up attacks on Red Sea shipping, claiming solidarity with Palestinians amid the war in Gaza.
The difference is these were not kind of pinprick, back and forth, what ultimately proved to be feckless attacks. This was an overwhelming response that actually targeted multiple Houthi leaders and took them out. And the difference here is, one, going after the Houthi leadership, and two, holding Iran responsible. It is Iran that has repeatedly funded, resourced, trained, and helped the Houthis target not only U.S. warships, but global commerce, and has helped the Houthis shut down two of the world's most strategic sea lanes.
Trump's administration recently relisted Houthis as a foreign terrorist organization. The White House also released photos of President Donald Trump dressed in golf attire watching the strikes on Iran-backed group. Giorgio Cafiero is a professor at Georgetown University and CEO Gulf State Analytics. Professor Cafiero is now joining us live from D.C. Good to see you. First of all, will there be any ramifications of the action and strikes by the U.S.?
Thank you. Great to be on your network as always. Good question. You know, right now there's a lot of uncertainty. There certainly are good reasons to be concerned about a major escalation at this point. The Houthi rebel movement, or Ansar Allah, has made it clear that these strikes, which the U.S. carried out yesterday, will not go unanswered. When, where, and how the Houthis are going to respond remains to be seen. As far as the Iranians are concerned, I don't think that at this point Iran is looking for some huge brawl with the United States. I think Iran might retaliate, but it might not be anytime soon. It also might be done in a manner in which Tehran will have some sort of plausible deniability, which is something that we've seen from Iran over the decades. So really so much uncertainty. One unknown factor meets another right now.
Professor Cafiero, where does that leave the much anticipated Iran-US talks on the nuclear program?
Well, Trump obviously wants to negotiate another nuclear deal with Tehran. He's made that very clear, but he is also at the same time sort of threatening Iran in pretty direct manners, we've seen in recent weeks. And I think the Iranian leadership does want to see sanctions lifted on the country. And I think ultimately the Iranian leadership knows that the only way to achieve that outcome is by negotiating one way or another with the United States. But in light of everything that happened last year, Iran does not want to give off the impression that it's coming to the negotiating table from the standpoint of weakness or from a position of being what the Iranians would see as being bullied by Washington. So I think what Trump is trying to do right now is make the Iranian leadership see a higher cost that comes with moving slowly. And Trump is trying to bring the Iranians to the negotiating table quickly. And, last year we saw the Iran-led axis of resistance suffer major blows. This was clear in Syria, where the government of Bashar al-Assad was toppled in December. And then we also witnessed everything that happened in Lebanon with the war between Israel and Hezbollah. So at this point, the Houthis and also some of the Iran-backed groups in Iraq seem to be the strongest legs within the axis of resistance. And I think by going after the Houthis, Trump is trying to send a message to the Islamic Republic that the U.S. is going to continue degrading Iran's networks of allies and partners and surrogate groups across the Middle East.
All right, we'll see how that pans out. Professor Giorgio Cafiero, it's good to see you. Thank you very much for talking to us today.
وردا على هذا العدوان نفذت القوات المسلحة بعون الله تعالى عملية عسكرية نوعية استهدفت من خلالها حاملة الطائرات الأمريكية USS هاري ترومان والقطع الحربية التابعة لها شمالي البحر الأحمر، وذلك ب18 صاروخا باليستيا ومجنحا وطائرة مسيرة في عملية مشتركة نفذتها القوة الصاروخية وكذلك سلاح الجو المسير والقوات البحرية. وردا على هذا العدوان نفذت القوات المسلحة بعون الله تعالى عملية عسكرية نوعية استهدفت من خلالها حاملة الطائرات الأمريكية USS هاري ترومان والقطع الحربية التابعة لها شمالي البحر الأحمر، وذلك ب18 صاروخا باليستيا ومجنحا وطائرة مسيرة في عملية مشتركة نفذتها القوة الصاروخية وكذلك سلاح الجو المسير والقوات البحرية. إن القوات المسلحة اليمنية لن تتردد في استهداف كافة القطع الحربية الأمريكية في البحرين الأحمر والعربي ردا على العدوان على بلدنا.